There is a moment in every life when the noise becomes quiet enough for you to hear the truth you have been avoiding. It usually does not arrive with thunder. It arrives on an ordinary morning while you are looking at your phone, driving to work, lying awake at night, or staring at the ceiling, wondering where the years went. And suddenly, you realize something frightening. Lease the small things. The life you keep telling yourself you will begin someday has already been waiting for you for years. The question is not whether you have time. Fix this. The question is whether you are willing to keep spending it on the same things with the same excuses while secretly hoping tomorrow will become different without requiring you to become different. You tell yourself you are tired. You tell yourself circumstances are difficult. You tell yourself you need more money, more confidence, more knowledge, more support, more time. And perhaps some of those things are true. But there is another truth hiding underneath them. Sometimes what we call waiting is really fear. Sometimes what we call preparation is procrastination wearing respectable clothing. Sometimes we are not confused about what we should do at all. We know exactly what needs to change. And that is precisely why we keep looking for another answer. Because knowing creates responsibility. Once you know, you can no longer pretend you didn't. Think about how quietly 10 years can disappear. 1 year of saying, I'll start next month. Another year of saying, when things settle down. Another year waiting for motivation. Another year recovering from disappointment. Another year comparing yourself with people who started before you. Another year consuming information instead of applying it. Nothing dramatic happened. No door slammed shut. No warning siren sounded. You simply kept postponing the life you wanted, one ordinary day at a time. And that is what makes wasted time so dangerous. It rarely feels wasted while you are spending it. You may be sitting there thinking about something you once wanted desperately. A business, a stronger body, financial freedom, a skill you promised yourself you would master, a book you wanted to write, a relationship you wanted to repair, a version of yourself that felt courageous, disciplined, focused, alive. You remember that person. You remember the excitement. You remember the plans. But somewhere along the way, disappointment became familiar and familiarity became comfortable. You stopped asking, what could I become? And started asking, what can I get away with? That is the quiet tragedy of human potential. A person can become accustomed to almost anything, including a life far smaller than the one they once imagined. Give a person enough repetition, and even frustration begins to feel normal. They complain about the same circumstances, wake up at the same hour, consume the same distractions, make the same choices, and then wonder why the same results keep returning. But your future does not listen to your intentions. Your future listens to your habits. It is being built right now, quietly, through the things you repeatedly do when nobody is watching. And perhaps the most painful part is this. You already know which habits are stealing your future. You know the hours disappearing into your screen. You know the conversations that drain your ambition. You know the environments that keep you small. You know the promises you repeatedly make to yourself and repeatedly break. You know what happens when you stay awake too late, wake up without direction, postpone the difficult work, and then spend the evening feeling guilty about what you didn't accomplish. You know, the problem is not always knowledge. The problem is the willingness to act on what you know. There is a dangerous psychological comfort in imagining your future self as a different person. You say, one day I will become disciplined. But discipline is not a personality trait waiting somewhere in the future. It is a decision repeated today. You say, one day I will become confident. But confidence is often built after you do the thing you were afraid to do. You say, one day I will change my life. But life changes when an ordinary Tuesday becomes the day you stop negotiating with the habits that are destroying your potential. There is no magical morning coming to rescue you from the choices you keep making tonight. And listen carefully, because This is where many people misunderstand their own lives. You do not need to hate yourself into becoming better. You do not need to wake up every morning ashamed of who you are. Shame may create movement for a moment, but it rarely creates transformation that lasts. You need something deeper. You need honesty without cruelty. You need to look at your life and say, this is where I am. These are the choices that brought me here. And from this moment forward, I am going to take responsibility for where I go next. That is not punishment. That is power. There may be people who underestimated you. There may be people who abandoned you, betrayed your trust, laughed at your dreams, or made you feel as though you were not enough. And yes, those wounds matter. But there comes a moment when your healing cannot depend on the person who hurt you finally understanding what they did. You cannot spend another decade waiting for an apology before you begin living. You cannot keep giving someone from your past control over a future they will never have to live. Sometimes emotional maturity means accepting that you may never receive the closure you wanted, and then choosing to close the door yourself. You may have spent years chasing approval because somewhere inside you learned that being accepted meant being safe. So you became agreeable. You became available. You became whatever people needed you to be. You swallowed your opinions. You ignored your intuition. You stayed in places that made you smaller because loneliness seemed more frightening than self-betrayal. But eventually, you discover something. Abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable is still abandonment. And the day you begin respecting your own life, some relationships may change. Let them. Not every departure is a loss. Sometimes losing access to an old version of your life is the price of meeting a new version of yourself. There is also a kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. It is the loneliness of knowing you are capable of more and refusing to do anything about it. You can sit in a crowded room and still feel distant from yourself. You can have people around you and still feel that something is missing. That missing thing may not be another person. It may be your own trust in yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, that trust grows. Every time you break one casually, it weakens. This is why small disciplines matter. They are not merely tasks. They are evidence that you can depend on yourself. So stop waiting for a dramatic transformation. Start with something almost embarrassingly ordinary. Wake up when you said you would. Finish what you started. Put the phone away when the work requires your attention. Read instead of scrolling. Save instead of spending to impress people. Exercise when you do not feel like it. Learn when nobody is praising you. Say no when your values require it. Have the difficult conversation. Apply for the opportunity. Build the skill. Make the call. Write the first page. Take the first step. Your life does not become extraordinary through one heroic decision. It becomes extraordinary through thousands of ordinary decisions made with unusual consistency. And understand this, motivation is unreliable. Some mornings you will feel inspired. Other mornings you will feel nothing. If your progress depends on emotion, your progress will always be fragile. You must learn to act when the emotional weather is bad. You must learn that discipline is not the absence of resistance. Discipline is moving while resistance is present. The person who waits until they feel ready may wait forever. The person who acts despite not feeling ready begins accumulating something far more valuable than motivation. Evidence. Evidence that they can move. Evidence that they can endure. Evidence that fear does not have the final vote. Perhaps you are afraid that if you truly commit, you might fail. But consider the other possibility. What if you never commit and succeed, only at becoming comfortable with regret? Failure can bruise your pride, but regret can haunt your identity. Years from now, you may not remember every mistake you made, but you may remember the opportunities you were too afraid to pursue. You may remember the business you never started, the person you never became, the dream you quietly buried because you were afraid someone might laugh. There's a particular pain in realizing that the prison had a door, and you were the one who kept refusing to walk through it. Do not misunderstand me. Life will not suddenly become easy because you decide to take responsibility. You will still experience rejection. You will still lose money sometimes. People will disappoint you. Plans will fail. Your confidence will rise and fall. There will be days when the old version of you whispers, "See, this is why we stopped trying." Those days matter because transformation is not proven when everything works. It is proven when something goes wrong and you refuse to return to the person you used to be. Your past deserves compassion, but it does not deserve control over your future. Maybe you wasted years. Maybe you made foolish choices. Maybe you trusted the wrong people. Maybe you were distracted. Maybe you were immature. Maybe you simply did not understand what you understand now. Fine. Learn from it. But do not build a permanent identity around temporary mistakes. A bad chapter is not the entire book. The tragedy would not be that you lost 10 years. The tragedy would be losing another 10 years because you spent the next 10 grieving the first 10. Look at your life differently. Your age is not only a number. It is a measurement of opportunities already spent and opportunities still available. If you are 20, you have time, but do not become careless with it. If you are 30, do not believe the lie that you are late. If you are 40, your story is not finished. If you are 50, there is still work that only the wisdom of experience can help you do. If you are 60, there are still people you can influence, lessons you can teach, and days you can live with greater intention. The clock does not ask whether you feel ready. It simply continues. One day, you will have a morning that looks ordinary, but feels completely different because you finally understand the value of the hours in front of you. You will look at your calendar and realize that your life is not waiting somewhere in the distance. This is it. This morning, this conversation, this decision, this body, this mind, these people, this opportunity, this breath. We spend so much time searching for the perfect moment that we overlook the imperfect moment that is actually ours. The future is not a place you arrive at. It is something you manufacture from today. And there is another trap you must escape: comparison. You look at someone else's success and imagine you are seeing the whole story. You see the house, but not the years of sacrifice. You see the confidence, but not the nights of doubt. You see the achievement, but not the failures that came before it. Then you compare their visible chapter with your invisible struggle and conclude that you are behind. You are not required to live their life. Your responsibility is to develop yours. Stop asking why their journey looks faster. Ask whether your own journey is moving. You will also have to become comfortable disappointing people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. When you begin changing, some people will say, "You have changed." They are right. You should change. If you become healthier, more disciplined, more focused, more honest, and more protective of your time, the people who were comfortable with the old version of you may not recognize you. Do not become arrogant. Do not become cold. Simply become clear. You can love people without allowing them to decide the direction of your life. There is a quiet power in becoming less available to distraction. Silence begins to reveal things noise was hiding. When you stop filling every empty moment with entertainment, you begin hearing your own thoughts. At first, that can be uncomfortable. Old fears rise. Regrets surface. Questions you avoided become louder. But stay there. Do not immediately escape into another screen, another conversation, another distraction. Sit with yourself. Your mind may be carrying wisdom beneath the noise. Sometimes the voice you call anxiety is asking for attention to something you have ignored for too long. This is where real awakening begins. Not when you suddenly feel powerful, but when you stop lying to yourself. You stop pretending you do not care. You stop pretending the relationship is healthy when it is not. You stop pretending the job is temporary when you have stayed for years without a plan. You stop pretending you are researching when you are actually afraid to begin. You stop pretending you need another motivational video before taking the first step. You become honest enough to say, I have been waiting for permission that nobody was ever going to give me. And once you accept that, something changes. Responsibility stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like freedom. Because if your life is entirely controlled by circumstances, you are powerless. But if your choices matter, then your future is still negotiable. You cannot control everything that happens to you. You can control what you practice, what you tolerate, what you learn, what you repeat, and what you become. That is enough to begin. You do not need control over the entire road. You only need enough courage to take the next honest step. So, I want you to imagine yourself 10 years from now. Do not make the picture beautiful just to feel inspired. Make it honest. Imagine waking up 10 years older with the same excuses, the same habits, the same distractions, the same unresolved fear. Imagine realizing that the person you are today was given another decade and spent it waiting. How would that feel? And now imagine another version of those 10 years. You became disciplined. You learned, you saved, you built, you healed. You strengthened your body. You protected your attention. You became emotionally mature. You stopped chasing people who did not choose you. You became someone your younger self would respect. The difference between those two futures may not be one enormous decision. It may be what you do after this sentence. That is how close the future can be. Not tomorrow, not next year, right now. When this recording ends, there will be a tiny moment when nobody is watching. That moment is more important than you think. Because you will either return to the old pattern or interrupt it. You will either tell yourself, that was inspiring, and continue unchanged, or you will turn inspiration into behavior. Never confuse emotional intensity with transformation. Feeling something deeply is not the same as living differently. You do not need to rebuild your entire life tonight. You need to stop betraying the next hour. Protect it. Use it. Give it a purpose. 1 hour of focused work. 1 honest conversation. 1 page. 1 workout. 1 application. 1 lesson. 1 financial decision. 1 difficult boundary. 1 promise kept. Then another tomorrow. Then another. Eventually, these small acts become a reputation you have with yourself. You begin to trust yourself again. And when a person trusts themselves, they become difficult to stop. There will be moments when you miss the old life because even an unhealthy life can become familiar. You may miss people who were not good for you. You may miss habits that were destroying you. You may miss the version of yourself that required less courage. Do not mistake familiarity for destiny. Growth often feels like loss before it feels like freedom. It lies in the small things. You are not necessarily becoming colder because you are becoming more selective. You are not becoming selfish because you are protecting your future. You are learning that your energy is finite, lays in the small things. Your attention is valuable, and your life cannot be given equally to everything that asks for it. And when you finally become serious about your life, you will discover that many things you thought were urgent were never important. The argument you replayed for 3 days, the opinion of someone who barely knows you, the number of likes, the comparison, the gossip, the endless scrolling, the desire to prove yourself to people who have already decided what they think of you. These things consume extraordinary amounts of human life. Meanwhile, the things that could change everything are often quiet. Reading, thinking, practicing, saving, building, resting properly, loving deeply, and doing difficult work when nobody applauds. Your life is not asking you to be perfect. It is asking you to be awake. Awake enough to notice where your days are going. Awake enough to recognize when fear is disguising itself as logic. Weddings. Awake enough to notice when loneliness is making you chase someone who cannot give you what you need. Awake enough to recognize when your pride is preventing an apology. Awake enough to recognize when your comfort has become a cage. Awake enough to understand that healing is not simply forgetting what happened. Healing is refusing to let what happened determine everything that happens next. There is still time, but do not use that sentence as another excuse to postpone action. There is still time should not mean I can wait. It should mean I have enough time to begin. There are people you have not met yet, places you have not seen, skills you have not mastered, work you have not created, strength you have not discovered, conversations you have not had, versions of yourself you have never encountered. But they will not arrive simply because you wish for them. They emerge through decisions made by the person you are today. So tonight, forgive yourself for the years you cannot recover. Do not romanticize them. Do not deny them. Learn from them, then release them. You cannot drive forward while staring through the rearview mirror. Take the lesson and leave the weight. The person you were 5 years ago did what they knew to do with the awareness they had at the time. You know more now. That means you have a responsibility to use what you have learned. Wisdom becomes meaningless when it is admired but never applied. And if you have been waiting for a sign, perhaps this is the sign you were expecting from the outside, but needed to create from within. Nobody is coming to announce that you are finally ready. Nobody is going to hand you a certificate saying you are allowed to change. You are allowed because you are alive. You are allowed to begin badly. You are allowed to be inexperienced. You are allowed to be afraid. You are allowed to small things. You are allowed to start over. What you are not allowed to do, if you truly want a different life, is keep pretending that repeating the same choices will eventually produce a different destination. 10 years from now, you will be somewhere. The question is not whether you will arrive. You will. The question is, who will arrive there? Will it be the person who kept postponing? Or the person who finally decided that their days were too valuable to waste? Will you meet your future self with regret or with gratitude? Will you look backward and say, I wish I had started? Or will you quietly smile because you remember the exact day you stopped waiting? Maybe that day can be today, not because today is magical, not because everything will suddenly become easy, lies in the small things, but because you finally understand something that can change the direction of an entire life. You do not need another 10 years to become who you could have been. You need to stop giving away the years you still have. Lies in these small things. You need to become intentional with your attention, disciplined with your habits, courageous with your decisions, honest with your relationships, and patient with your growth. You need to stop demanding immediate evidence that your effort is working. Roots grow in darkness long before a tree becomes visible. So wake up. Not tomorrow morning. Wake up to this moment. Look at your life without excuses and without hatred. Look at it with the calm courage of someone who has finally decided to participate in their own future. If you have been sleeping through your potential, open your eyes. If you have been hiding behind fear, step forward. If you have been waiting for someone to choose you, choose yourself. If you have been waiting for life to begin, understand that life has been happening while you were waiting. And when the doubt comes back, and it will, remember this moment. Remember that you once realized how quickly 10 years can disappear. Remember that you do not need to become extraordinary overnight. You only need to become a little more disciplined today, a little more honest today, a little more courageous today. Then tomorrow, do it again. The compound effect of those decisions is where lives change, quietly, gradually, permanently. Perhaps the greatest gift you can give your future self is not wealth, recognition, or success. Perhaps it is simply this: a life in which you can look back and know that you did not abandon your own potential, that you did not let fear make every major decision, that you did not spend your one precious life trying to impress people who were never going to live it for you, that you loved, learned, worked, failed, healed, tried again, and kept moving, that you became awake. And someday, when another decade has passed, I hope you remember this ordinary day. I hope you remember that you were sitting somewhere listening to these words and something inside you became quiet. Not because someone gave you a perfect plan, but because you finally understood that the responsibility and the privilege of your life belongs to you. Your future is not asking for perfection. It is asking for participation. It is waiting for your next decision, so make it a good one. Put down what is stealing your attention. Pick up what is building your future. Call the person you need to call. Close the door you need to close. Open the book. Start the work. Take the walk. Make the plan. Keep the promise. And when nobody notices, keep going anyway. Because the most important transformation in your life may happen in complete silence, long before anyone else can seize it. Thank you for spending these moments with me. If something in these words reached a part of you that you have been trying to ignore, don't simply let that feeling disappear when the screen goes dark. Carry it into your next decision. Carry it into tomorrow morning. And if you want to continue exploring the psychology of discipline, self-worth, emotional strength, and personal transformation, stay close to this channel and subscribe. There are still deeper truths to uncover, and perhaps the next one is exactly the one you need to hear. But for now, remember this. 10 years will pass whether you are ready or not. The clock will move without asking permission. The days will become months, and the months will become years. You cannot stop time, but you can stop wasting it. And that decision does not belong to some future version of you. It belongs to you right now.